Hey, Riff listeners, thanks for tuning in again today. We've got a special one for you. We've got Jody, who's our Springfield Dream Center director. She's hosting a conversation with Anthony. He is our student pastor at the Springfield campus. And we've got Ann Robertson. She's been a North Pointer for a long time. They talk about what it's like being single and what it's like post-marriage. And so this is a great conversation, no matter where you're at in your life, whether you're single, you're dating, you're looking to get married, or you've been through divorce and you've been on the other side of marriage. This is a great conversation that we think will be super practical for you. Let's jump into it.
Well, welcome to the Riff. I'm Jody, and I am going to be your takeover host today. And I am joined by Ann Robertson, one of my longtime favorite people. Ann and I have known each other for well over a decade.
Yes.
And has always been a voice of wisdom. And we are also joined by one of my favorite new people I've met in the last couple years, and that is Anthony Hall.
I'll take it.
And Anthony is student pastor at the Springfield campus.
Yep.
So Ann and Anthony, I want to start today. We're going to have a conversation about something that people think I'm really good at. And I was like, man, why do they think I'm so good at this? And then I started doing some math. And I'm like, okay, if I'm currently 33 and I've been married for 3 years and have been dating or knowing, like getting to know Chuck for the last 5, that, man, I spent a long time single. And so I get asked, what was it like being single? Is it good? Is it bad? Or hearing from friends who are in that stage of single and they're like, I hate it. I need out of this. Or just learning how to be content. And so today, the takeover is us talking about relationships, talking about single.
Fun.
And so whether you knew it or not, that's why I invited you to join me.
It's a trap.
Exactly, it is a trap. Because Anthony, I know you are single on staff at North Point, and so it's kind of like people know your name and they know you, and so we're gonna walk through it from a guy's perspective of some things on relationships, and then Ann, as a voice of wisdom, I mean, you walked with me through relationships and staying away from them or leaning into them,
right?
And have spent a lot of your life single as well. So. Hopefully today we've got some different perspectives and some fun stuff. But really quick, people may or may not know you. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about you. And I'm not talking like, don't tell me what your dating profile looks like. I'm not looking for that. Just tell me about you as a person.
Great. Yeah, 6'1" on paper, about 5'9" in real life. Some say 5'8". Just kidding. I'm born and raised Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I was there pretty much my whole life. Didn't attend church, ended up getting saved at the end of my senior year, which was 2017. So still feels pretty recent. Got saved, ended up going to college for ministry. Awesome. Spent 3 years there and have been here at North Point for about 2 years now, going on 2 years. So just kind of got saved and went all in on God, and that shifted everything, and now here I am able to talk about singleness and not just be upset about it.
Perfect. I love it. And I love that perspective of you were introduced to a relationship with Jesus later. And that does definitely, I think, change how we filter relationships with others. Definitely. And so you have seen on both sides of what does it look like to pursue relationships without God in the mix and faith in the mix, and then on this side of it as well. So, Ann, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, mine is probably almost exact opposite because I came to the Lord as a child, and so spent most of my dating life as a Christian, which definitely looks different, I believe. You know, it doesn't have to, but it usually does. I probably would represent more of the single again crew because I have, been married and, represent the single again crew, have young adult daughters, and that's fun. That's a lot of fun. But I came to North Point over a decade ago, and I served on staff for a while and have had different assignments since the North Point days, but yet there's always, I think once North Point's home, it's kind of in your blood, you know? I know that sometimes I'll come back and I'll say, the assignment may be this, but this is home still yet. So hopefully there'll be something encouraging to come out of this.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate both of you sitting down and talking today. I know sometimes when you are the expert on something, it's not always our favorite season in life that people point to. So whether that's you've had a painful season and people are like, okay, talk to me about that. Tell me about that. And the same could be said for being single. Sometimes I think that's viewed as a lack of relationships. What I found to be true is that when I was single, I actually had really rich, amazing relationships. It just looks different than romantic. So talk to me about what's a misconception of the single life? What's something people think is true about being single, but you've actually found it to be different?
I think exactly what you said is that there is a stereotype to being single, and there's not at all, because a single experience, whether it's always single or single again, regardless of what stage you are in life, that's as individual as the individual themselves. Finding the richness in relationships around you, that all begins with finding out who you are. And that is where the individuality comes in. Knowing who you are and what you need in that season, I think that's really important. And that's something that I don't see happening anymore, is everyone is looking for that person to complete them. And it's like, why can't you just be complete and then find someone else who's complete if you're looking? And I think it's okay to not even be looking. And that's kind of, I think, what you hit on is that, you're always looking. Everybody's, this is a lacking season. No, it's actually not. If you're lacking, you're going to be lacking as a single. You're going to be lacking as a married person. If you're complete as a single, you can be complete as a married person. I think that it comes down to the individual rather than which box on the IRS forms you check.
Absolutely. Yeah. And while I am not single now, Chuck and I have been married for 3 years, together for almost 5. One of the things that set Chuck apart from other people I had talked to in the past was one time we were on this date and he said, "Hey, I need you to know that you compliment me." I'm like, what a weird thing to say, though, in the middle of a restaurant, which Chuck was famous for. I don't think we had a normal date ever. Still, like every time something happens and there's some weird thing, he's rapping on stage or knows everyone there. So there's no like, let's start dating quietly with Chuck Dow. So he said, "You compliment me." And I said, "Well, what's that mean to you?" Because inside I thought, oh my word, this is one of the things I've been waiting on, is I don't want someone who says you complete me.
Right.
That pressure is not mine to hold, and it's not someone else's to hold for me. And so he said, I've been through these seasons as an adult of trying to figure out who I am, of coming to terms with I can be a whole person. It's me and Jesus.
Right.
So it is a relationship with God that restores the brokenness, that allows me to be complete. And the person I want to spend the rest of my life with complements that. So they bring out the strong things. They can help me through the hard things. But for me, it was one of those moments where I knew Chuck was different and he was going to stick around for a long time, because the way he approached us coming together as two single people. And I'm like, too often I'd had that pressure when dating of, hey, you complete me. And they mean it sometimes as a nice thing. And maybe some of us at this table have said it, where it's like, oh man, you complete me. And all we mean is I really enjoy spending time with you.
Sure.
But I think when you really peel it back, when someone, myself or someone else, is looking for completion, then they are not ready yet to compliment. And while we're going to be works in progress always, Chuck and I we've been in a season where we've dealt with a ton of grief, and we've never done that together. So we're learning how does each person grieve and what does that look like? We're constantly growing, but I have to know who I am and how I am before I can expect that somewhere else. So
it's draining to feel like you have to complete someone, because you're trying to be a whole person yourself and then think, oh, I have to pour over into them too. There's not enough of that. So when you start looking at this person as a drain, It's like two people can be good people and not be good together.
Not be good together, yeah.
And that doesn't mean that, one's great and one's bad. It just, sometimes they just don't fit well together. And a lot of times it's because the give and take is a constant give, and it's because there's never going to be enough. We are not meant to complete a person. We don't have enough to fill ourselves and to fill them.
Yeah, I think it kind of changes our view on people, at least in my experience with like just the thought of dating. I think that just for reference, before I was saved, I honestly didn't really care about dating. I probably liked one girl my entire life before that I really liked in high school. Didn't work out. And then I got saved and I felt like this weight and so much pressure of oh, you got to get married. You got to get married. So then I was like, I got to get married. I got to start by dating. And it kind of changed the way that I just viewed people. I realized that it started to be less about natural and organic relationships and more about do they check these boxes off? And then as I matured, I realized I got some boxes that I need to check off. Like you're talking about, I had to grow to a spot where I was dateable before I could ever even consider dating. And in that process is when I realized man, it changes my view on women, because a lot of the times because I felt that pressure, I would kind of be oh, it's nice to meet you, but at the same time I'm is this it? Box A, B, C, D, you know what I mean? And then it just it changed the way I saw things. And if they didn't check off the box, it wasn't okay, I don't talk to you, but I just realized that it was I was trying to do too much to make the process happen when I found that honestly, the relationships I've had since being saved, and I'll say this, 2 of the 3 were good that I thought were going to work and unfortunately didn't, which is okay. That's one misconception I'm sure we'll hit, is that it's okay for relationships to not work out.
Sure.
But 2 out of the 3, they found me when I wasn't looking. When I wasn't looking at everyone like it was a box and I was just focused on myself. I was running my own race. I was able to look to the side and see, oh, this person's kind of right here with me. Maybe I should look into that now. And it just changed my view on everything.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said, you're okay, people become transactional. Is this who I'm going to marry?
Yep.
And that is a ton of pressure when you're meeting someone
So
and
much.
you're just analyzing everything about them and every interaction. And I think there is this societal pressure of when you reach a certain age, when you get to a certain point in life, it is, well, when are you going to get married? Or when are you going to settle down? And those types of comments used to drive me crazy because I'm well, what is it about me now that you don't think is good enough on my own? Or you want me to settle down, so what part of my life do you think is out of control? Because that's what you're saying to me. When in reality, people mean well. We say stuff all the time, and the intention behind what they're saying is great, but how it feels when you're in this season is not that. So I think sometimes when we say things like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to settle down? We put undue pressure on people to say you are either less than or lacking. And then people become transactional.
Yep.
Yes.
So I think we have all could probably say a time when we felt transactional to someone else or when we were transactional about people.
For sure.
And that's not I don't think that that's when we look at relationships in scripture as a guidebook. I don't think that's what they're about.
No.
When I even watch how Jesus formed relationships with disciples and the people he's walking around and serving, there wasn't anything transactional in the way he approached people, but yet society creates that pressure.
Right.
Definitely.
So
There's a popular Christian book, and I won't say it because who knows, the author may be listening to this right now.
Well, absolutely. Best podcast.
You're right, for sure. But if I were to say the book or the author, I know you would definitely be like, oh, yeah, definitely remember that. I think it probably hurt Christian singles more than anything, and it was not intended wrong. But it was basically a book about dating transactions. And that's not the word he used, but since we're talking about that, basically it was saying, dating should always be headed toward marriage. So you have to look and say, oh, is this person someone I want to marry? Not even, do you want to go get a cup of coffee and find out if I even want to, talk to you or whatever? Well, there began this pressure, and I know you're kind of nodding. You know exactly the book and the author I'm talking about. It was well-meaning. This is what he thought worked for him. But the whole idea was totally changed, and I think it was because we were coming out of a season of dating being confused with a popular TV show that says, dating and all the terms that come along with you're also disposable. I like you for 10 minutes, but then now I'm going to like this person for 10 minutes and so on. Well, the whole flip side was to go to this idea of you only are going to go out with somebody that you want to marry. You don't know this person. How do you know you want to marry them? And how do you even necessarily know that you want to get married? It's okay to verbalize saying, you know what, I'm okay where I am. I'm not sure I even am looking for that. And I feel like that was kind of where you were when you and Chuck found each other. It's like, I'm not opposed to marriage, but I'm okay where I am. I've got a full life, Christ is meeting all of my needs. I'm, in a job I absolutely love. I'm fulfilling a calling. And I think that's when you are able to look outward, is when you're not having to focus so much on, the inward fulfilling. And nowhere in Scripture, as you were saying, does Jesus say, I saw you talking. Nowhere in Scripture is it recorded, when are you going to get married? And then at the weddings, they say, so when are the children going to come along?
Just you graduate from college and when's the ring?
Yeah, when's the next? When's the next?
Always the next question. So let's talk for a minute. We'll lighten it up just a hair, okay? And then we'll dive back in. So talking about people who mean well-intentioned things when they say it. Tell me, what is your least favorite thing people say to you while being single?
Boy, there's a lot to choose from there,
right?
Isn't there?
Yeah. I hear it all. I mean,
I
this is a true story. Over Christmas, I went back home for a couple days. We watched Shrek. A top 10 love movie, gotta be Shrek and Fiona's relationship.
Of course,
absolutely.
And my grandpa pauses it and turns and looks at me and he just goes, "Why are you single?" I was like, these ogres made you think of me being single. I was like, yeah, so I gotta go with why am I single? I'm like, I wish I could answer you, Grandpa.
Right.
And when you're in college, I remember going home and it's always, how's college? Second question, you got a girlfriend yet?
Yeah.
You got a wife yet? You married yet? And now that I don't have college, that question's
gone. Number one question.
Just, why are you single? I'm like, I wish I could know.
I always hated that question too, because I'm like, I think you're complimenting me. I think you're trying to say, hey, you're awesome. People should be lining up to spend time with you. But what is actually heard from your communication is that, man, so what's the skeleton in your closet? Why are you secretly...
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
What's going on in there?
And again, there's nothing wrong with being single. I love my life married, but I loved my season of being single. And it was because I got to learn who I was. And I got to read Scripture and apply it to my life and to say, what do I need to learn? Not because I need to reach this point of perfection to then have what's next. But I think sometimes when we wait, Scripture will say, wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. And sometimes if we are just waiting for marriage, we miss the actual work that God has asked us to do. We miss the volunteer opportunities. We miss the relationships, the mentorship moments. We miss the time that we have the freedom to spend in other ways.
Yeah.
And if we are only waiting for what we view is the best thing, then we will actually miss what God's best thing is for us.
I think like the season of being single or just being single in general, it's the perfect time to like build dependency on God.
Yeah,
and that's when like you shift your mindset from, did they fit these boxes to like, I got to just make sure I fit my own boxes, and then I can, before I even consider dating. And even in scripture, like we see in Corinthians, Paul talks about singleness being a gift.
Yes.
And by that he's talking purely because the flexibility and the freedom of it. Like you're able to do way more. I've never been married. I'd assume there's perks to it, but I do know that from the marriages I've seen, there's a little bit of a codependency, or at least co-living with each other, to where I'd imagine you can't just do things Monday through Sunday night. You then have to like take into consideration someone else. Whereas when you're single, you kind of can do stuff Monday through Sunday. So as far as the church goes, like you were saying, I love that. If you can shift your mindset from like, who am I supposed to be with, to what can I do right now, especially within the church, you're going to grow immensely, and then you're going to be a better partner than you ever thought you were going to be. You're going to grow on top of that. So your singleness is going to be great because you're growing and it's intentional. And then, like I said, as soon as you stop looking, the chances of something finding, or someone finding you, I should say, is probably a little bit higher than if that's all you're focused on.
Yeah, that's good.
And favorite thing people say to you?
Oh, and by favorite, we're doing
talking
the
least favorite,
ha-has. Let me tell you, one of them would have to be, you seem like you would be such a good wife, so what happened? When they find out you're in the single
when you're
again
single again.
camp. Yeah.
And you're like, we're jumping straight there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Because it's like they can beat around the bush to trying to, really get the dirt on, but also a runner-up. And again, people mean well. I mean, they really don't mean this bad. I can't believe it. But it's like when you speak to singles and you come from a single again, there was, I have to believe, a well-meaning person said to me, well, don't you feel like you're kind of like encouraging single again types? And I said, well, single again people, yes, I'm encouraging. It's, that seemed very hurtful to say that just because one person from a single again camp is speaking to a group, I'm not saying all of you, if you're married out here, be sure you run out and leave your spouse or anything. There was nothing about that. And I think that trying to say that just because you can live whole in a season that may not seem whole does not mean that we're saying, that this is, definitely everybody needs to do this. Yeah. But to say single again types, well, no, single again people. Yes, I will say whatever needs to encourage those people. I don't think anyone's going to hear my story and think, man, I wish I had that. That would probably be a runner-up one.
I got a runner-up too, real quick.
Oh,
This is my dad's go-to. He'll be like, "You're your dad's boy. How are you single?"
Oh,
I'm like, hey,
Dad's got confidence.
Listen to this. My dad's single. I was like, okay, that explains it. That's the line.
I am my dad's boy.
I guess so.
I always got a lot to have you met? And I'm like, have I met?
Yes.
And I'm sure your cousin, I'm sure your next door neighbor is awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
But I was always like, if I have not asked you a question about that person, then I thank you. But
it's always the most random people. They're like, it's like my physician's kid. My physician's kid. And you're like, I think I'm good.
I think I'm good.
A single person will approach you with, he would be perfect for you. And you're like, you're single and he's single. Why aren't you two dating if he's so perfect? Why does it have to be me?
Yep. The friend that's always trying to. Listen, I was that in middle school. So I was that in middle school. Two of my friends are married now too. The guys. So if I ever do that to you, you got to know it's good. It's good. Matchmaker over here.
Funny.
Okay, so there was a lot I loved about single season. And so share with me, I think it is okay that sometimes when you are single, it is hard. I don't want to give people that are listening today this pretense of like, hey, we're always happy, always satisfied, always just like go ho. What's the word?
Gung ho.
Gung ho. There we go. Excited.
I thought you said go home.
Let's just switch the word to excited. That's one I can say about being single. But when I look back on that season of my life, it was still one of my favorites. Even though I I would say that being married and building a family with Chuck is a favorite season of mine. I don't look back with hurt towards the time that I waited to then meet Chuck one day. And I have friends who have been able to be single and very happy. And they've also had times when it was really hard, where they were like, man, will my time of meeting someone who is worthy of building a life together with come along? But tell me some of the best lessons you've gotten to learn while being single, because I think there are people who definitely are probably more in the am I being punished by not getting to have a relationship, who really desire to be married, to have a spouse, to have a person with them. So what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way that may encourage someone who's in that season where they're trying to be content waiting, but they also are longing for something more?
I would think build your people around you. Because in marriage, a lot of times, you look to that other person to, these are practical things and maybe silly to some, but, check the things on the car, be there when you're sick and there are still things that need to be done as an independent single person, who's in a home or whatever. Build those people around you that can help, not just in practical ways, but help bear the load and that you can help bear theirs also. And make sure those people are healthy enough to be that person. Whoever you are as a single or a married is what you will be in the other season also. So by surrounding ourselves with healthy people, building your team that can be that encourager that you can also encourage, that can be, kind of the practical helps. And just, that's so important, is that, single does not have to be alone. Those are not synonyms. And they only are if you allow it to be. So
I think that's really important. Single is not alone.
Yes.
There's always a good time for community.
Yeah,
okay,
for
so single
sure.
is just
Always.
another opportunity for great
absolutely.
community. Yeah. Anthony, what's one of the best things you've learned?
One of the best things I've learned, and this has been an ongoing, I think, so I've been saved, 5 years now. And I would say this is something that's been ongoing since from the time I was baptized and decided to commit to church and ministry and living with God to now, is friendships, boundaries within friendships and relationships with the opposite sex. It can be, for me, I'm someone who I like to have fun. I'm pretty energetic, stuff like that. And so I had to learn, honestly, in some difficult ways, that an encounter for me that might mean nothing can mean something completely different to someone else, or a conversation, or a response to an Instagram, or something like that can completely lead someone a different direction, whereas to me it could mean nothing. And so that's something that's it was tough to realize, because it was because it didn't mean anything to me, it was hard for me to comprehend the weight of it. But I also am a very caring person, and so I'm I always feel bad when people feel hurt or misled, especially if it's by me. And so I had to learn really quick, okay, what does it look like to have friends of the opposite sex? And I went through a phase when I was dating in college where I was you can't have any. And so I would legitimately not look, not talk to, even if it was for work, I wouldn't do that. And then I ended up getting in trouble because there was stuff that had to be done for ministry with someone of the opposite sex. So then I started doing that. That relationship ended, and I was looking back and I was I probably don't need to do that. So then the next relationship, I kind of learned, I was oh, now I've been on the other side where it can almost be too friendly with the opposite sex. And so just learning boundaries and not just learning them, but actually abiding by them and implementing them in every relationship you have. It's something that'll protect you when you're single, because you're not going to feel led on yourself or lead other people on. And then when you're dating, it's, even,
that's good.
It pays off even more.
Yeah. A lot of that comes down to communication too, and knowing you've got to know yourself of when you start to develop feelings. And I think this happened a lot when I was single. People would develop feelings, I thought, off of just this is how I treat everyone. And then I would catch wind of, hey, this person's really interested in you.
Yep.
And it would make me really awkward and uncomfortable because I'm like, well, what have I done? But then I'd also find myself in the same situation where there's someone else and I'm like, man, but I really care about them.
Yeah.
And you have to know at a certain point when you start to have feelings for someone where, I feel something towards them, you have to be willing to have a conversation at some point. And you can't have that conversation with I expect you to match the feelings that I have. Because if it's in a friendship and it's being built and it's organic, you haven't had this conversation of like, hey, we're going to go, we're going out as a group today to go bowling, but I'm trying to get to know you. If that's not the conversation and we're just all bowling and I realize, man, I really like that person. And every time they bowl, I pay attention. I should have picked something other than bowling where you just see like the
bowling.
good side, right? Every time they bowl, I pay attention.
One of my top 3 traits is how good I am at bowling. I'd like to put that out there.
I would like to put that out there. That would go on your dating profile if you have one.
Yeah.
Do you carry your own bowling ball in the trunk of your car?
2 of them.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So does Chuck. So Chuck always
And
carries
that's why
it.
I'm single, Grandpa.
Yeah, we came to the answer. We figured it out. But I do think that you have to be willing at a certain point to say, hey, if I feel this way continually, if each time I'm with this person, I'm feeling a certain way, then I have to have enough respect for them to also say, hey, either this friendship needs to change, because we either need to now say we're going to get to know each other and grow a relationship, or I need to put my feelings in check because they're not reciprocated. And that's not pressure on the other person. That's how organic relationships are formed.
That's great.
So,
though. That like clarity and communication is everything. Because I've also been in situations where there's mutual interest, but one person's like way more interested than the other, and then it's like, well, we can kind of keep talking, but well, I'm aware that this other person feels this way, but I'm like feeling it out still. So they're just in different stages. So with that communication, it's like you can easily realize that we either need to be more intentional about learning if this is something that we're both mutually interested in, or I don't think this is for me, so we need to not do it. Otherwise, I need
to protect your emotions by changing,
or I am just leading them on.
Yeah.
If I'm aware of it and I continue to do it.
Yeah. Yep. I think communication is key. Let's talk really quick. I have 2 last things I want to hit. Let's talk about how dating has changed over the years. So I have friends who got married, right out of college. And so they now have kids who are old enough to babysit my kid because I waited till I was 30 to get married. So a different stage of life. And dating for me was way different than dating for them because they're dating in high school over a decade ago. And so how do we date in the context of being within God's blessing, of wanting to do things in a way that follows what we see in Scripture? So what's maybe one dating lesson that you've learned or that you're trying to, it doesn't mean you've gotten it right every time, but what's one thing you would try in the future or give people advice on?
I think, again, it comes down to communication from the beginning, is making sure that we're understanding the definition of dating up front. In the 21st century, dating is more temporary. The term seems to mean temporary. It's physical, it's temporary, and it's everybody's on the same page, no emotions allowed. Okay, if you are talking about dating someone, I think knowing that, obviously that is not God's best for us. And talking out, because even Christians can get that skewed by, seeing it the way society sees it. And I think probably communicating up front, what is dating for you? What does that mean to you? And not having the whole, let's plan this all out. But I think just having a pretty good idea of, is this, just a temporary fix for you and then you move on down the line? Or are you wanting to get out and just have fun and get to know someone, and really making sure it's not old-fashioned to figure out where they stand spiritually. What are your beliefs on God?
That's huge.
Because, Christians sometimes we can get quiet on that too, going, we don't want to sound over-spiritual. Well, then you can kind of get yourself into some bad situations and, somebody ends up compromising, and then the hurts kind of carry on from there. That's kind of what I see. And I think I see that from the different seasons of dating, and seeing each one go, oh, no, thank you. But communication has just got to come back to it, I think.
Yeah, I think communication's key.
In
so you asked me on
everything.
it's in everything. But you asked me on a date, and so what's a date for you? Is it a meal?
Exactly.
Is it getting to know each other? Is it
Is it
bowling?
bowling?
If Anthony asks you bowling, he has asked you on a date.
Yeah.
So now, if you ever go out with
get-
friends, you're going to have to be very clear.
I can't go bowling again.
Does she get to borrow one of the bowling balls you carry around? Oh, okay.
Nope.
So she'll have to. Okay.
Those are custom.
She's got to use a house ball.
Okay. There you go.
Yep.
Good to
He's
know.
waiting for someone to pull their own out of their trunk, and then he'll know.
That's not on my list.
Not a checkbox.
I'll be the bowler.
Anthony, tell me something a lesson where you've seen dating change, or where you're trying to. How do you pursue a dating experience that involves Scripture as a guide?
Yeah, I think enjoying the process is something that I've noticed. The same way that I can examine Scripture and not receive something immediately, and sometimes have to sit on it and let it brew in a sense, meditate on it, whatever I need to do to experience and learn this Scripture. It's the same thing with dating. I don't think that we can go into it immediately expecting the future.
Right.
That's something that I've learned firsthand too, is I want a family and I want to be married and I want these things. And so because I know I want it, sometimes I don't enjoy the dating process, or things go wrong in the dating process because I'm so focused on how do I get from A to D when I still have B and C in between. And so just enjoying that process. And then also, I would say, as far as singleness goes, evaluate where are you, and are you even dateable? Not meaning in a sense of, what's wrong with you?
Glass
Know
for
what's wrong with
dodgeball,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But what are real things in your life that aren't attractive to other people or aren't going to be life-giving in a relationship, and how can you fix that now? And that's something that I think people take for granted in seasons of singleness, is we're so caught up in I don't want to be single that we're not I can be single and be developed. And so just focusing on that development it will pay off in your season of singleness and your season of relationship.
Yeah. And I think I would just add to that to really encourage that when you're working on yourself, it's in the context of who did God create you to be, and what has he created you to do? And you find that through reading Scripture. God gave it to us as a guidebook. So you find it through reading that and learning, not from, your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend told you that you were really bad at this, or I broke up with you about this. So we're not basing our areas of growth off the feedback of other people, but we're basing our areas of growth off the opportunities that God's trying to give us.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And we get there by knowing him better. We know him better by digging into Scripture. And so as you're creating who you want to be dateable, you want to be dateable because you are walking in to what God has given you. 100%. And that comes from him and knowing him, building that relationship. And then the feedback of other people can help you grow, but it's not going to deflate you or make you feel like you are less than in that season. So to wrap up today, I just want to share, there was something I learned in college that was really encouraging to me. And I think it's in Psalm 27, and it is the verse that says, "Wait patiently on the Lord. Take heart, wait patiently." And that is probably not word for word what it is, but it is close to that. And I just remember this idea that when I was approaching being single, that it was wait, and it had the word patient. Of both of those words, I had to learn what that meant. And that wait didn't mean that I stopped my life until that happened, but it was when we are in a waiting season, when there may be something that's coming next, how am I approaching what's before me? And then at the same time, this idea of patiently. And I loved the reminder in that verse that I'm not waiting patiently on my spouse. I'm waiting patiently on the Lord. That if I believe that when God has things that say, hey, I know the plans for you, they're good, they're for you to prosper. When he holds my future, then I can wait patiently for what he has until that point comes. And then I heard someone describing the difference between being single and married in a way that I had probably been taught a million times, but I'd never caught before. And they described it as this garden, that being single was working in the garden with your hands. So you're like on your hands and your knees and you're digging in to what God has for you. You're learning. It's personal. It's intimate because it is you and God. It is you and your ministry. And for me, that was me and launching the Dream Center. So, you talk about sharing time. I could be here till 10 p.m. I could be working on a Saturday because I had that luxury of the single season to be in the garden on my hands and knees digging. And it's very, very personal. And I'm grabbing what my hands can get to. And then they described marriage as being in the garden with a tool, and not because there are times that you want to call your spouse a tool.
Of course
and
not. Yeah,
I'd like to publicly apologize to Chuck Dow for the times that I have, because it has happened. But this idea that where in single life, our hands to the ground are what we have, that when we are married, it becomes this tool that allows us to go further or deeper or to places that we did not reach as single. Not that those places were better than where I was, but it creates a different type of work. And for me, I have seen that to be true, that who I am is awesome. That's why Chuck Dow picked me. Yeah. Hey. But who I am does amazing work and has sets of gifts and things. But that when Chuck and I are able to come together and to do our marriage together, to approach different parts of life with a teammate, that it does allow me to do things that it's not that I couldn't do as single, but that I wouldn't have wanted to do, or areas of influence that I just wouldn't have been in front of me before. And so that idea that, man, when you are waiting patiently on the Lord, again, we are waiting, we're believing scripture that God is a good God and he has a plan for us. So that's who we wait on. And while we're there, get in the garden. Get your hands dirty. Like, figure out what weeds do you need to pull? What plants do you need to put roots to and nourish and take care of? But it's a season that can be immensely beautiful if you allow it to be. So thank you, first of all, to the two of you for joining today.
Thank you.
And sharing your wisdom and your stories. And if you are listening to the Riff today, I hope that this has been an encouraging conversation, that wherever you are, if you are single again, or encouraging others in your life that are single, that you have learned, stop asking us why we're single and what's wrong with us.
Watch Shrek.
And go watch Shrek and learn something about love. And at the same time, that you are encouraged that who you are is you were created by a loving creator and a God who has a plan for you. And so lean into that, learn from that. And every season you're in can be a beautiful season if we put the work and the patience in. So awesome. Join us next week for the next combo on the Riff. I hope you are encouraged, and thanks for listening today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week wherever you find podcasts.